Okay. I'm not going to go after Elizabeth. Let's see. This I thought was really well done. It's just there was something about this that was very clever. When this girl got knocked out, she was on a white background to begin with. And Caitlin, in this case, actually picked enough of the, picked an area anyway of the metal background that was predominantly light in tone. And so if there was any sort of like line edge that existed on this, I'll show you some of the other ones where a line actually did exist on this. You can't really pick it up on this because the background is actually light. It was just a very smart way of doing it. And I'm just going to pick one other, try Alicia's really quick and see what it looks like. That one's actually pretty good. So let me look for somebody else's really fast. Take a look at Aaron's. Well, we pick up a little bit right here. You can see that there's a little bit of that edge that's running right along here of the white edge that's actually still left. Again, two options that you had here. One would have been to go on into the refine edge tool so we can see what that will look like really quickly. So I would go ahead and pick the mask to do that. Click on the select and mask. It'll bring me into that select and mask space. And I'm going to check to make sure that I am on layers to see what, so now I'll actually see what it does. Make sure that the refine edge tool is the one that is selected. Make it a little bit smaller because we don't need to run it that big. And simply click and bring it down across this and see if it helps. And this is the difference. So that was the original, that's the new. It does a little bit, but in my opinion, it doesn't really help a whole lot as far as that part goes. So I'm going to cancel out of that. That's not going to be my option. The second option that you can do is to choke and spread this. But remember, when you do a choke and spread, before you do that, you want to do a history snapshot of this first. So I'm going to click on this little camera to bring up my history snapshot dialog. Call this pre-choke. And again, the reason I want a pre-choke state is so that if I screw something up, I have got a history state that is sort of before I screw things up. So now I'm actually going to, again, I'm working on the layer mask right here. I'm going to slightly blur the layer mask. My problem will actually get a little bit worse. That would be too strong of a blur on there, so I'm going to try like a 2. That 2 is probably still too strong as well. Try like a 1. Yeah, that 1 feels a little bit better, so I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And then Command-L to bring up the levels dialog box. And in this case, I don't really want to sharpen it up. I just want to choke this. So I'm pulling it in like that. And you can see it's gotten rid of that little white line that's around there. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. I'm going to do another snapshot of this and call it post-choke. So now I've got my pre-choke and my post-choke states right here. If I wanted to, I could go actually back to the beginning when I just opened this up and select the post-choke state and select then the history brush and only go after areas. I can just do it with a paintbrush now. I can only go after areas where I really see that problem. And you can see I'm painting that white line away as far as that goes. But I'm not touching the rest of the image. You'd only do it on image. You can see areas like right in here. It's also a problem. It's also a problem up along this top arm right here. So again, it just lets you paint those areas to get rid of that stuff. Okay. Other questions on that one? All right, I'm not going to save that. Got two more to show you guys, and then we're actually do something today. This was Ari's. Again, he had his mask, his layer in there. That part actually worked fine. This was just really extremely well done. I thought if you take a look at it, the body, it's a really believable knockout as far as that whole part goes. The feathery parts right here, all of this stuff was extremely well done. I just wanted to point that out. And that's all we need to talk about as far as that part goes. So if I can get everybody to grab one of their versions of this, does everybody have a copy of that profile that actually has your path on it? Yeah, anyone? Yeah, the first one. I am going to grab Elizabeth. So everybody's got one that's got a path in it, right? Does anybody not? I'm looking for the profile one. I just want a profile with a path. That's all. So the one that you did that actually has the path on it, that's all I want you to come up with. Anything that just got a path on it, that's all I really care about. I'm going to steal Elizabeth. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this. Nope. And can you also open a copy of the background? So do you have just the metal and just the profile that's got a path on it? That's what I'm looking for. I'm just going to create my own. Okay, so this is where I'm at using Elizabeth. I've got, actually there is, again, there's a copy of the profile. She made a copy of it. That part's great. She actually did the path. That part is also great. If you actually select the path to make it active, this will be interesting because it looks like hers is grayed out. And we'll see what happens here. No, actually the path does still exist, so that part's fine as far as that part goes. So we're good here. So her path, this whole part works. That part's great. I'm going to look at the layers now. So this is the problem that I think most people did, is that most people, instead of grabbing the background metal and dragging it onto the image that had the path on it, they did the opposite. Everybody grabbed this layer right here and drug it over to the metal background. And when you do that, you actually lose the path, which sort of defeats the purpose. So back here in this, what I'd like to do is actually be able to move the path as well. In order to do that, come into the path palette, click on the path to actually make it active. You can tell mine is active now because it's got a highlight on it. Go back into layers, and with she's got a layer mask already on here. If I click to add another layer mask on this, you will end up seeing what happens is you end up getting the path becomes another layer mask, and you can see it right here, and you can tell that it's a path mask because it's got that the way paths show up as masks is they are always in this white and middle gray. That's just the way they look. You can't, this is, again, the path is being determined. This mask is being controlled by the points on the path. So there is no, you can't go in and paint on this thing. You can't do any of this. You could go in and move the points around, but you can't go in and paint on this thing. However, in doing this, we have a problem, and the problem is this. If you zoom in and look at this thing right now, you will notice you can actually see the path line on there. If you go back into the path palette, and you'll notice that neither one of these is on right now. However, what's happening now is that there's two masks that are really controlling what you see here. The pixel mask, the one that's the black and white one, is controlling this, but so is this outline, the path that we actually just attached to it. And you don't want that to happen, because the one that's attached to it, actually you end up seeing it's not a feathered path anymore. It's not, I mean, it's not a feathered selection anymore. You'll see that really hard edge. So in order to get away from that, what you want to do is hold down the Shift key and click on this, and it'll put a red X on it. And now what ends up happening is that the pixel mask is what is controlling what you see here. However, the path mask, or the path mask, is also attached to this, and you can see these little chain links between here. These little chain links are an indication that all of these guys are locked together, which is important for us, and I'll show you why in just a second. I'm going to double click on the hand to jump back out. And we are now going to drag this layer that's got the pixel mask and the path mask, the vector mask is what they really call this thing, onto our metal layer. And you'll see now when you drag this over, it brings all three with it. So you end up with the pixel mask, you end up with the vector mask, both on here. If you then click on the hold down the Shift key and click on the pixel mask again to undo that, you'll notice that you actually get that path in your, where did you go? Sorry. Okay, it's sitting right here. Let me put my layers and paths back together again. So in my path, you'll notice that you moved that path with it, and that path is sitting right here right now. So we did two things. We attached it, and then we moved it, and it brought it with us, and it brought it in register as well. So for instance, if you click on this path mask and then come over here and click on the direct selection tool and click and drag across this, you will notice that that path is no longer in register. It should be in register. Mine isn't, and I don't know why. So I'm going to try it again. And make sure it was in register to begin with. Yeah, it is in register. All right, so again, let me get rid of the path, the vector one. Okay, so to do it again, click on the path to make it active, come into your layer, make sure that the layer you want to add that to is also active. Click on add another layer mask on there. It will add the vector layer mask. Then if you drag and drop this onto this image right here, why is it only bringing that path? But I've still got a path there, which should not be there. And I'm actually not dragging the path across. I'm sitting him right here on this layer. Maybe it's because that mask was active, but that shouldn't be. But at any rate, we'll try. See, it's actually bringing it over. And I see the outline of it, but I don't see the outline of my image. So I'm going to turn off the path. That's bizarre. And turn that guy off as well. See what's going on in the layer. Say what? No, it won't be inverted. It's sitting right here. And I am not seeing my image. Huh. Let's try this on somebody else's. I think I remember Ari's was done right as well. You know, that's what it was. Elizabeth, when you made that path and you came up here and you got up to the top, did you go around her face like this, or did you go around the background like that? I think you went around the background. So what your path ended up, it worked, but it ends up masking out the wrong thing. That's why I can't bring it over. Okay. Does that make sense, guys? So when she drew it, she started here, she came up here, blah, 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 blah. And instead of going around the whole face, she went the other direction. She went around the whole rest of the background, which is fine. I mean, both of them work. It's that we're okay on that. So let me just get my layers palette back again. All right, so same thing here, guys. I'm going to select the face, the path, the mask itself, come back over into my layers palette like this, click on this to add, and now I've actually added this layer mask again. I'm going to really quickly create a duplicate so I can have just the background. All right, so I've just got my background right here. The metal background is sitting right there. I've got this, again, this one layer that's got the pixel layer of the girl on the golden background, a pixel mask, and this path mask is now there as well. Click and drag this to bring the whole thing over. You can see that the whole thing is over now. I can actually move it around. And you'll notice when I move it, you can see that the masks, because they're anchored here, are all moving in unison with this, which is exactly what I want to have happen. But you'll also notice with the path mask active, let me link this back up again with my path palette. The path mask right here, you can actually see that it'll bring the face edge over as well. So this is the face edge has just gotten brought into this guy as well. Does that make sense? But the other thing that's important about this that really matters here, in addition to this, even if we weren't doing this transfer like we're doing right now, again, if you come into your layers palette right now, let's say you want to resize all of this. So I need everybody to resize their profile. So I'm going to transform it, Command-T to do a transform on this. I'm going to link the width and the height together, and I'm going to drag it down to like 75% and say okay. And what you'll notice is that also both of the, not only did the pixel mask get reduced as well, but so did the path. This path is now actually smaller. And you can see in our very top one, we've got the face edge. This was the original path, but there's a new path down here that's actually smaller. If you click on that new path to make it active, then click on the direct selection tool, come over and drag across this, you'll notice that all of those points stayed exactly in register where they were supposed to be, but everything got shrunk down. So this is a way, if you were going to transform something after you've gone to all the trouble. I mean, imagine how long did it take you guys to actually do the body mask, right? I mean, that girl was a pain in the ass, right? You've done the whole thing, and all of a sudden you decide, oh, I need to resize the body, and you're just like, oh God, I got to make that path again. You don't. You just need to, again, put the path on as a vector mask right here. And then when you do any transform, and it can be any transform, you can puppet warp these things, you can transform them, you can invert them, you can stretch them, make them taller and wider and whatever, and the path will actually go right with it. Lindsay?
Wait, so you're just supposed to have the path selected and then go over to the layer
and click on Add Layer Mask. Okay, so I don't know what this is on there. Okay, so that's just a plain profile, right?
Yeah, and I went over.
Okay, so first make a pixel mask. So load this guy as a selection first. Command click. And feather that selection, so up to the select menu. You just loaded it again, so it's not feathered. Select menu, that's good, right there. Feather. Do like one pixel. Okay. And then back to layers and apply it as a mask. Perfect. Then go back into path. Click on that to make it active. Go back into layers and click on add another one. And add it. There it is right there. And that's the guy that you can now move to the metal layer, but it's also the guy that you can transform. And you end up transforming the path. It's just a huge thing. Are there questions about this? Are we good on this, guys? See what? No, you're not turning it in. Oh, no, you don't. No, you're not going to return it in. Okay, so apparently there was quite a bit of trouble with the homework. You guys just seem demoralized about this. So we're going to check. We may be doing the homework that was due, what was due for this week right now. Let me check and make sure. So what one was it? Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure it's the same. It's the same one on my notes. Okay, so let's start from the beginning on this, guys. So everybody just open up a virgin copy of this. Don't do the one that you've already been working on. We will get through this probably enough for you to turn this in again for your homework, but don't tell Verser because, you know, then he'll know and, you know. Okay, so what I ask you to do is actually to do the knockout of this using 3 different methods. And the first method we're going to do on this, so has everybody got a copy of this up? Okay, the first method we're going to do is channels. So I'm just going to go through this. If you get lost or something isn't working for you, stop me. And other than that, let me get you.
What made it particularly weird was that her hair is out of focus.
Yeah, it does make it particularly weird or bad or hard or whatever. Something to deal with. All the above, right? Okay, so we're going to start first things first. We're going to actually go looking for a channel that will give us the best separation. Again, I'm not looking for separation of her skin tone. Maybe I will be looking for separation for her skin tone later on, but that's not what I'm looking for right now. What I'm really concerned about is her hair, separating her hair from the background. So I look at the red channel, that is no good to me. I look at the green channel, that's actually better. And then I look at the blue channel, and that's no good to me as well. Again, what I'm looking for is contrast between the background and her hair. So that's what I'm getting here in the green channel. So I'm going to copy the green channel, and I'm going to rename this green channel knockout, or just channel knockout, just so we can keep it separate how we did this one. So CHANNEL knockout KNOCKOUT. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into this area that's up here next to her head up here. And again, what I'm looking for is an area up here of hair that I can pick that I know should actually go to black. Now, I get nervous about areas like right in here. You can see this area. Look at where I'm pointing at on my screen up in here. I think there's too much transparency in this hair up here for me to believe that I can actually knock that out. However, this guy right here, I actually feel pretty good about this little area right here. So that's where I think I'm going to go after. I'm going to put a point right here. So again, I'm going to go to my eyedropper tool, to the color sampler tool, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to drop one eyedropper right there. And then I'm going to put another one up here on the background that's away from her hair. So those are my 2 points. I'm going to change my color readouts in my info palette to give me RGB readouts. And in my RGB readouts, I ended up my point number 1, the hair that I picked as reading an 80, 80, 80. And then the background I'm getting is reading a 158, 158, 158. So I am going to hit Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. And I'm going to start dragging the black point slider up until I get my first point close to 0, but not quite at 0. Stop dragging and go to my arrow keys and use the arrow keys to tap in until I just get to 0. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing with my white point. I'm going to pull it back until I get it to white, till I get to close to 255. And I got to 241. I'm going to start tapping in now using my arrow keys. You'll notice that sometimes the original point number 1 will actually take on a tone. Mine didn't. Before you say okay to this, you need to actually look at the quality of mask that this is giving you. Yeah. You need to get to 255. Yep. So before I say okay to this, I need to use my preview checkbox to look to see how much of this hair am I keeping, how much am I losing. I feel like I'm keeping a really good amount of that little feathery hair that's around there on the outside parts. I think that those parts are actually pretty good. This part down in here, again, I'm just turning the preview on and off I feel like that's actually giving me a pretty good, as far as that part goes. I'm losing a lot on her skin tone as far as that part goes. I will figure out some way to deal with that later. But the hair part I'm feeling reasonably good about. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. Okay?
So it's okay that lose the skin.
Yeah. All right, so I feel like I've got a pretty good one on the hair. Where I'm missing is this entire side of this girl's cheek right here. That part's not working for me. And I've also, on this side over here, things do not look all that attractive right over in here. I feel like I've got this sort of softness over here. I'm going to fix the softness over here first. I'm going to do it with a overlay brush. So again, I'm going to go to a tablet right now. Hang on one second. Let me get a tablet plugged in. All right, with my tablet plugged in and going in the correct direction. Okay, so I'm going to hit the B key to come up with a brush. I'm going to make this sort of a medium hard brush. I want to be able to control a little bit better of that part of it all. I'm going to change the blending mode of this to overlay and the 100% flow, 100% hardness. I mean 100% flow, 100% opacity is what I want to keep. And then I'm going to simply try to paint this line that's on the side of her cheek right there. I'm going to try to avoid those little hairs that are on the side of her face. I'm also going to go after her collar right now to actually bring that part in. And so I'm feeling reasonably good about this side of her face right now. If you don't like all the little skanky hair, other stuff that's around all of this, to get rid of that, if you want to, hit the X key to get a white brush instead of a black brush. Make it a little bit larger, and simply get rid of all of that sort of extraneous background stuff. Again, I tend to try to not make this brush work any harder than it has to work. So that's going to take care of that side of things for me. So I'm feeling pretty good about the hair. There's clearly a lot of hair up in here that's got highlights on it and stuff, all of which we need to get. So I'm going to zoom in and take a look at this. Again, with my overlay brush, I'm going to hit the X key. Wait and do what? Sure. Did you?
I know, like, if you, like, which side you work on first, whether it's.
I go after the hair first. It's not really the side.
No, not on the picture. I mean, like, when you're.
Oh, when you're doing overlay brush to go.
You do the side that you're trying to keep.
Yeah, I'm doing the side that I'm trying to keep. I'm doing the side that I try to keep. So the question was where I think this is what Ari's asking. In my decision here to go after the black edge first and then clean up the white edge next to it, that was based on wanting to keep the black edge. So you do the part that you want to keep first and then do the cleanup part after that. All right, so I'm going to go up, and again, there's parts up in here in her hair that are highlights, and then there's part that are background. This area right back in here is background, I'm fairly certain. To make sure, you can simply just click on this. You can see, yep, that's actually background area right there. So I don't want to be painting that in. But this part right here is all hair highlights, so I can go after all of that. I'm still using an overlay brush. That's all background there. You don't want to actually get to that. Now, I get frustrated that I can't, again, this area right here, the minute my brush goes beyond, the minute my brush touches the rulers, I lose the brush part. So I'm going to go to my paste board, hit the F key once to get to the paste board, and now we can actually work off of it. Again, there's areas back in here that's actually background in there that you don't want to actually make any other color. I'm going to do the same thing over in here, and I'm just repeatedly hitting this overlay brush. I'm going to stay away from that edge as much as I can, and I feel pretty good about that. If you want to just clean up a little bit more, you can go up to just a regular normal brush. Make sure it is a completely hard brush, and you can actually just go in and clean up a little bit of area right in here. It's just the top part of her hair to give me something to work with. But now I need to recover her ear right here, and I need to recover her neck. So again, I'm going to go looking at channels again, and I spot that the best channel to actually recover that part is going to be the red channel. It's this guy right here. You can see that edge, Lindsay. Sure. Same thing we did with Sunny. Your channel knockout, have you got this? Are you feeling pretty good about that? Yeah? We've got nice hair here, nice hair here, nice edge here. Does yours look even remotely like this? Yes? No? Say what? So what we need to do is get this. Okay? So there's a couple of ways we can get this. How would you guys get this edge? Pen tool would probably be the easiest one to actually do it on. So again, if you were to simply come up here to the top, click on this, come down and do the pen tool will probably be the easiest, right? However, I'm going to try and get it actually using the red channel as well, because the red channel gives me good contrast in between these two. So I'm going to copy the red channel. I'm going to call this temporary right skin. And I'm going to say okay to that. I'm going to zoom into this. I'm going to do exactly what we did before. I'm going to drop 2 points down. So again, color sampler tool. I'm going to drop one on the edge of her face and one on the background right next to it. And hit Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. I need to change my 0.3 drop down to read RGB color, and I need to do the same thing with 0.4. In this case, my 0.4 is the darker of the ones, so that's the one I'm going to actually watch when I move the dark slider. And again, I'm trying to get that to close to 0, but not quite there. And then go to my arrow keys. That's zeroed out now. And then I'm going to go to my white slider and pull it back. I'm close to 251, so go to my arrow keys and type into 255. And then again, before I say okay to this, I'm going to look at this edge right here. And I feel like it actually made the edge. It's done a pretty good job on the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to this. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup work on this just to make my life a little bit easier. So I am going to go back to an overlay brush. 100% opacity, 100% flow. Again, I'm going to make this a medium hard brush. And I'm just going to clean up that little area. Oops. Make sure that white is your foreground color, because I'm trying to keep this skin part as white. So I needed that part of her ear, and I need just this part of her neck. That's the only thing I need, is that edge right there, and I feel like I've got that edge pretty well. So to use this edge now, I'm going to load this thing as a selection. When I load this as a selection, areas that are dark will be protected, areas that are light will not. So I'm simply going to Command click to load this as a selection, and then I'm going to go back to my channel knockout. This is what I want to work on, and I'm simply going to paint this edge right here with black. So I'm going to hit the X key to get black as my foreground color, changing my blending mode back to normal, still 100% opacity, still 100% flow. You don't really need to worry now about whether you have a hard brush or a soft brush, because the selection is going to actually do the work for you. So I'm simply going to click in this area and paint that edge of her face. And I'm hitting this twice. I'm actually leveraging that opacity part. Yes? It looks like your mask moved. It may have. Go back in history, look at your history really quick and see if there's a move anywhere in there. Sometimes it happens. There's a move up here in the top, so you're going to have to go back to that point. So don't worry about it a whole lot. I think you get what's going on here, right? So now I've got the other edge made, and so you can hit Command D to deselect. And I'm going to double click on my hand to jump all the way back out. And the only thing that I might be missing is a little bit of, I don't really know what's going on in this area right up here next to her ear, right here. So I'm going to look at the RGB version of this. And that's all going to black. So I'm okay. I don't need to worry about that part. So again, with just my channel mask knockout selected, hit the B key and go ahead and paint the rest of this in. And then I'm going to zip back out. I'm going to take the lasso tool, the L key, and I'm simply going to run inside this black line to get the rest of her face. And I'm filling that with black. Command D to deselect. And then typically of me, I've actually built this mask, I've inverted it. So I'm going to hit Command I, because again, I want the mask to be light so that it'll actually let the image show through. So, say what? Copy your what?
It's because I like redid the
No. No, we started with the green channel to do the original mask, and then did the red one to actually add to it. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. So hit Command D to deselect, and then just finish up your brush. You need to clean up that area right in there, and then you just need to keep the rest of this part out. Or, like I say, I do it with a lasso tool. Once you get a wide enough edge, I just go to your lasso tool to select the whole center part of it. It's just faster than painting. All right, I'm going to see what this first one looks like. To try it out, I am going to add a blank layer above my background. So I'm going to click on that to add a blank layer on top. I'm going to fill that blank layer with white. Just adding a blank layer on top of the background. In the layers palette, blank layer on top and filled with white. Yeah, well, you can invert it now or you can invert it later. I just know that it's just how I always work. You guys know that about me by now. So I'm going to copy the background, make a copy of it, drag that copy up on top of my white layer so that I can see how well my mask works. Yes. Again, white is your foreground color, Option Delete. If white is your background color, Command Delete. That's okay. So I'm going to Command click to load my channel knockout as a selection, and I'm going to come over and click Add on that, and this is what my knockout looks like. And it's reasonably well done. I mean, if you look at it, you have spill. You can see spill that's actually happening in here. But for the most part, that's actually not too bad. The edge may not be perfect in here. Again, I feel like I've got spill on that. So we might as well go ahead and fix the spill now. So again, if you feel like that you need to choke this mask a little bit, which we might have to do, we'll see what the spill fix looks like on it, and then we'll decide. So make sure that you're working on the pixel layer, not on the mask, but on the pixel layer to actually do this. Hit the B key to get a brush. Change the blending mode of your brush from normal down to color. And then make sure you have a completely soft brush. And make sure you're only working from the inside, from the outside towards the inside. We are going to sample her skin tone to sample any color with the brush selected temporarily. Just hold down the Option key. That gives you the color picker. And again, simply select her skin tone. And then working on this pixel layer, come in and just take care of the spill. And that part actually removed pretty well from there. When you get up near to her hair, you need to stop here. We need to resample color up here. We need to resample actually a hair color now. So that's where I'm at right here. And then again, don't change any hair color that you don't absolutely have to change. I'm going to resample another skin color. I just keep my hand on the Option key the whole time, and I constantly resample to mix up a different color. Look at my screen up here really quick, guys. If you feel like you put down a color that's wrong, simply hit a resample and do another color. Whatever color you lay down will drop on top. So if you put down a color that you feel like, oh my God, that has too much red in it, then pick something that doesn't have as much red in it, and you can actually paint over it again, and it'll just continue to change the color. If you really struggle with your color here and you feel like, okay, one of the color I picked was too red, now the color I picked is too blue, the two are really fighting each other, you can always drop your opacity down to like 50% to then mix these colors. So now we're actually mixing a little bit of red back into this, but not at full strength. So to sort of blend the color, like you see this color right here, this color is off. So I can actually change that. That color is now on again. It's now correct. So again, I'm going to crank my opacity back up again and finish taking care of all this spill. Lindsay. No, it isn't. If it's changing the ear, you're painting with hair color on the ear. You need to actually be painting with ear color, flesh color for the ear. If your brush is too soft and you can't control it, you need to make a harder brush. Make sense? Here. You are. No, that's the wrong color. So again, make the brush smaller. So we need to bring back ear color right here. Just sample the skin right here. And then paint to, don't come in from the outside because that's going to ruin the hair. Come in on the inside, Paint in here, and paint down it. You're painting across the hair. No, that's okay. You just want to hit the ear. That's real good. And then when you want to do the hair, do the hair. Okay, that's right. No, actually the overlay won't because you're trying to paint black on white, so the overlay is keeping you from doing it. Even though you've got a selection going, the overlay blending mode is keeping that from working for you. All right, so I'm not going to spend hours doing this, finishing this spill part up, so I'm just going to blast through mine. Again, I feel like this has got too much gray in it, so I would sample something that's got a little more brown in it, whatever, and bring a little bit more of that in. Probably mix this a little bit more. It seems a little bit on the light side to me, but nonetheless, can finish that part out. Double-click the hand. And that's not a bad knockout, all things considered. I've still got spill on this other side of her, which I need to take care of. All right. And then you can actually name this guy Channel Knockout. The temporary red channel, the temporary right skin guy, whatever, it's done his work. I would throw him away. And then you want to save this because you can turn this in as your homework. So do a save as and name it whatever you're going to name your homework. I don't know what number it is. That's up to you guys. I'm just going to put mine in my TOFs folder. All right, so that's one down. Second one. The second one I said I wanted you to actually use 0 selective color. So that's the next one that we'll actually go after. I'm going to turn off this white layer and turn off the knockout one that I've done on the top so that I can actually just start to work on this background layer again because it's a virgin copy. It's got everything that's actually going for me in here. So that's where I'm going to start again to do this. So again, we made an action out of this the last time we did this, and so I'd like to go through that again just so that you guys remember how to build actions. This is an action that you should keep on your computer all the time. So that's what we're going to do. If you come over to the history palette, there should be a tab on there that does say actions as well. If you click on the flyout menu next to the right side of the word that says action, you can actually do a new action. A dialog box will come up and we will name this 0 selective color. I am going to leave it in my default actions group. You can do groups of actions. So there are people, for instance, I've got a series of actions in here that are just for me. I have a series of actions that are just for retouching. I have a series of actions that are just for resizing. You can sort of organize this, and that's what this whole set thing is about. And until you actually add another set, you will not have anything other than default actions. But for us right now, we can leave it in the default actions. Go ahead and click on the record button. Come over to make sure that this background layer is the one that is active and the other two are turned off. Come to your adjustment layer, click on the adjustment layer, and the first one we're going to add is a hue saturation. And then we are going to come right back to the adjustment layers again and add a second one. And the second one we're going to add is selective color. And then finally, I'm going to come up here in my properties palette, make sure that the reds are selected. It should be. Drag the black slider all the way to the right. That is flooding all of the reds of this image with 100% black ink. Then click on the drop-down menu to go to the yellows and do that same slider. We're only moving the black slider. Now what we just told Photoshop to do is take anything in this image that was yellow and fill it with 100% black ink. Now we're going to go to the greens and do the same exact thing. And then to the cyans and the same exact thing. And the blues and the same exact thing. I'm doing everybody. And the magentas and the same thing as well. The whites, the same thing as well. The neutrals, the same thing as well. And then finally the blacks, same thing as well. Now, if your image did not go completely black like mine, if it looks like this solarized thing, it's because you have relative radio button is checked instead of absolute. You need to make sure that absolute is the button that is selected. And then finally come back over to your action palette and click on the little box next to the red dot. That will stop your action from recording. To make sure that your action works, throw away that selective color and throw away the hue saturation guy. Make sure that the background is active and that the other two are turned off. Come over in your action palette and you should see there's a top layer. There's a layer that's called zero selective color. That is your action. You need to select that to make it active. Don't select one of these other steps or you will only get part of your action. But if you select the zero selective color and then click on the triangle that's pointing to the right, it will actually run your action. Now, you'll see in my case, I end up with that solarized look. It's not the end of the world. It just means I need to click on the absolute button. Oh, white is actually white. Turn on. It's transparent. You need to turn it back on. Say stop. And there. Go up. You're selecting down here. That's where you're starting. You need to select the next layer up. It's actually that guy. And run that guy. I have no idea why you're doing that. You did something in your action. It says it's selecting your background layer is what it's actually saying. Go ahead and hit continue and see what happens. And hit OK. Yeah, I would just go to the action all over again. But the easiest way to do it is just do it really quick. Go ahead and put a hue saturation layer on there. And then select the color and then drag all the sliders to the right. Not all the sliders, all the black sliders. Okay, I want to show you guys something really quick here because everybody thinks that, oh, this is only for doing green screen work, and this is not only for doing green screen work. So for instance, if you come to your drop-down menu and your blacks are, you pick your black as your color on the top, remember, if you slide this slider back to the 0 point, what you're telling Photoshop to do is, in this case, what I've done is every single one of my colors has been filled with black ink except for the blacks of this image. The blacks on this image, I'm not touching them. I'm not doing anything with them. I'm not filling them with black, but I'm not filling them with white either. If you drag the slider all the way to the left, though, you flood what is considered to be the blacks of your image with white ink. the opposite of black ink. What is this? It may look like a negative to you, but this is something else altogether. If I use this as a mask, what will it show? What will it affect? What will it not? This is the perfect shadow mask. You want to pick your shadows? This is it. It's sitting right there. So let's make a copy of this. Let's actually come over to any one of your channels. It doesn't matter because everybody's in black and white right now. You'll notice if you click on the red or the green or the blue, none of these changes at all. You can actually grab any one of them and make a copy of it. Just drag it down to the little dog-eared guy and name it Shadow Mask. I took the black slider. I picked colors up at the top, blacks, and then took that black slider and went all the way to the right-hand side. And it opened up my blacks. So this is, aren't all these my shadows? What you're looking at right here, aren't those my shadows? Yeah. It doesn't matter which color you pick. So just grab one of your RGB channels. It doesn't matter which one. You can also, if you wanted to, you could load any one of them as a selection. So you could command-click, for instance, on, I'm just going to go to the top. I could command-click on the RGB guy up here at the top, and it could save this selection and come down and do Save Selection and call this Shadow Mask as well. It's the same thing. ADOWMASK. And you'll see now I'll have two copies of this, and they'll be identical. This is the first one I built, and that's the second one I built. We're going to get there in 1 second. Okay. All right, I'm going to throw my second one away because I don't need to keep that. Back over here in your selective color, drag that black slider, the black ink in the black, for the black color all the way back so your image goes black again. Come up. I'm in selective color. I just went back to black. So the black's color, I just drug the slider. It was all the way to the left. I just brought it all the way back to the right. So now I'm going to come up to whites. And I'm going to then do the same thing there. I'm going to take the slider that is all the way to the right, the black ink, and go all the way in the opposite direction. What is this? These are the highlights of my image, right? So again, I can simply grab the blue layer, drag it down to make a copy, rename this highlights. Yes, you should have. You only need one. You're good. All right, so this is my highlight mask. I'm going to drag the black slider all the way back again in properties so that everything goes dark again. Make sure that you are working on your entire image on the RGB, the full RGB channel part by selecting again your selective color guy. Finally, I'm going to do one last one. I'm going to come down to neutrals, and I'm going to drag the neutrals all the way back. What is this? These are my midtones. So this will fuck you up. Drag the slider all the way back to the right. Go back up to whites and flood your whites with white ink. So that is your highlights are picked again, right? Now come down to your blacks and drag it all the way. What is this? This is a mask that protects my midtones. It will control all my shadows and highlights at the same time. I did the whites and the blacks. Yep, exactly. That is now a mask that will affect, if you were to put a color, if you were to use that mask with a color curve, it would colorize your shadows and your highlights and leave your midtones alone. So click on selected color right here. And then let's go within the blacks, drag this slider all the way back over. Come up to your neutrals, just come up to neutrals. Drag it all the way over. Come up to whites. So now the whites, you pull it all the way back. That's what I asked you to do. So go ahead and pull it all the way back. And then come down to blacks. Don't do neutrals. Drag it all the way over. If you use that as a mask, it would colorize. So let's try it. Let's save this as a mask. To save this as a mask, again, copy one of your channels. Simply drag, again, I'm going to drag the blue one down. And I'm going to call this highlight and shadow mask. And I'm going to load it as a selection. So, well, hang on, I'm not going to load it as a selection. First, I'm going to turn off both my selective color and my hue saturation layers. I'm also going to turn off the eyeball that's right next to that highlight mask. I am going to select my background at the very, very bottom. I'm going to then load this highlight and shadow as a selection. Simply Command-click to load it. It's now loaded as a selection. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to put a curve on this guy. And they just put a curve on here with this mask. So let's look at this mask, and you guys tell me what's going to happen when I actually do a curve on here. In the areas that here that is black, are you going to see any change? It's red only because you've got the eyeball on of this. You need to select your background color guy right there. And then turn that eyeball. Exactly, but you got your mask right on your curve. Exactly what you want to do. We've done this 1,000 times, guys. We've done this 1,000 times. I'm just showing you mine by holding, I just held down the Option key and clicked on the mask so you can see it. Because what I'm trying to show you is that this area that's white, and I'm going to make this curve really red. This area that's white, what's going to happen to my image in that area? It's going to get red. What about this black area? It's going to not get red, right? That's how masks work. So again, I'm going to simply click on this guy. I'm going to go into the red channel, and I'm going to crank the red. And you can see as I pop up like this, this whole area that's coming down the side of her face is unchanged. Her hair turns really red because that's what the mask is actually doing. If I go in the opposite direction, I start to look like this is a color palette of, for Stephen Klein. Okay. But at any rate, the reason people would use this, you can throw this curve away. This is the perfect way to do split toning. So for instance, I'm going to throw this curve away. Let's say that you wanted to make your shadows really blue. Command-click to load your shadow mask, the one that we just made. Come over here to your adjustment channel, and let's do a hue saturation on this guy because we'll shift it. We'll shift the color up in here. I've now got a mask on here that's only showing, it's only going to allow what I do right now to impact the shadows. So I am going to take the hue of this and I'm going to push it to the blue. And you can actually see that my shadows now are starting to take on a blue tone. I'm going to do the inverse of that by selecting my highlights now. Command-click to load my highlights. I'm going to add another hue saturation for that guy. And I'm going to push that in a warmer direction. So again, more classic hue, split toning here. So now what I've ended up got is I've got blue shadows and I've got warm highlights. Classic split toning. But again, the point that I'm trying to make to you guys here is that it's this selective color thing gives you power to select things other than just the green background. Okay, if you've done all of this, you can throw all those hue saturation guys away. You need to leave the original one on here that we haven't used yet. You need to turn on the hue saturation eyeball and on the selective color. You need to then, we're just going back to the beginning. And you need to drag your blacks and your whites so that your image is black. So all I've got is the hue saturation layer on here with no mask, a selective color guy on here. Both of these are visible. The eyeballs are turned on. And all of the black sliders for every single one of the drop downs in here is all the way, the black sliders are all the way to the right. And you should have a black image. Do you? No, we're not doing, we're forgetting highlights and shadow masks. Those are done. Just select the regular RGB guy right here, the RGB channel, and that's where we're at as far as this part goes. Everybody good? All right. I'm going to select from my drop-down menu the greens, and making sure that you do have the selective color one is actually active. I'm going to drag the slider from the right side, which is filling my greens with black ink, all the way to the left side, which is filling my greens with white ink. Now, the reason this doesn't become white is because that is not a very pure green. In order to make the pure green a pure green, that's why I've got this hue saturation adjustment layers on right underneath it. If you click on the hue saturation adjustment slider, you don't even have to pick the color. You use the targeting adjustment tool. It's the little thing that looks like a hand up at the top with two arrows pointing left and right. If you click on that guy, you will get an eyedropper, and you can actually come down onto your image. And even though this looks gray right now, Photoshop knows that this is actually green. And click on this, and if you drag to the right, you saturate the color. If you drag to the left, you desaturate it. So what we're trying to do is make the green greener so that the selective color has a greater impact on it. And you can see by zooming in here and looking at this that it's actually done a relatively good job of actually doing this. Is this working for you guys? Yes. Caitlin.
I tried doing this earlier.
Yeah.
And Photoshop
Keeps thinking what's right.
keeps giving me background.
All right, so your targeting adjustment tool, and you click on here, and you slit up. It's because your hue and saturation is on top. Yeah, this is sitting on top. This guy needs to be on, and I'll show you why in just a second. It needs to be down here, and now when it's down here, click on this guy, and it should go. All right, so this is a possibility that can happen. So this thing worked pretty good, right? Wouldn't you say? But here you need to check this out, guys, because the order that this happens in matters. If your hue saturation happens to be on top of your selective color, this does not work because the selective color has actually removed all the color in the image. So if you end up with your hue saturation on top and you try to get it to select the greens, this selective color has removed all the green from your image. It's made it either black or white. That's what the selective color is doing. So there is nothing for it to work on anymore. Whereas if the hue saturation is underneath the selected color, then what ends up happening is that Photoshop always works this way. It starts at the bottom and works its way up through the top. So it realizes that you want to saturate the greens before you hit this selective color change. Does that make sense? So it will screw you up if the hue saturation is on top. It's got to be underneath selective color. That's why we put it there. However, I'm going to zoom into this hair and take a look at this really quickly. I think this maybe is a little too aggressive in this area right here. This looks a little choppy to me. I don't really like, this just seems a little too aggressive to me. So again, with my hue saturation adjustment layer selected, I'm going to go to the targeting adjustment tool, and I am going to select on the green again, and I'm going to start to back it off just a little bit till I get a little bit smoother. I feel like things are just a little bit smoother in there right now. They're not quite as, it's just not quite as aggressive. It just feels a little bit smoother to me. So if you want to end up with the same thing that I ended up with, instead of having a 100% saturation push on this, I ended up with something that's closer to a 75. That's what I'm done on mine. If you want to do a before and after, we don't really have a preview here on this guy to actually be able to do it here, but you can use the eyeball on the hue saturation part here by turning this guy on and off and see how you sort of like your color, if that part works for you. So I think mine seems pretty good right now. I have still got a point number 1 and 2 on my image. And if you're looking at it right now, you'll see that you've got weird set of numbers on your readouts. I've got a readout here of 68, 59. It's really weird right here. And the reason I have got weird readouts right here is because I've actually got this hue saturation adjustment layer active. To see what these numbers really should be and really are, you need to click on the background. And now you will see that number 1 is zeroed out, and the number 2 up here in the corner is sitting at 203s. Is this working for everybody? Okay, so we need to actually go ahead and fix one of these guys or use one of these guys. Again, it doesn't really matter which one of these we go ahead and copy. So I'm simply going to copy the blue channel because I need something to run levels on. So I got to copy the blue channel. I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to rename it Zero Color Knockout. And Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. And I'm really, the hair's already gone to black. I don't need to really worry about that guy. But this background, I do need to clean it up. So I'm going to simply grab my slider and start to pull back. I'm watching my RGB readout for my number 2 point right now. I get to 253 right here. I'm going to go to my arrow keys and tip up until I get to 255. And I'm there. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. I'm going to double click on the hand. Now, in my case, I feel like, and I can see it over here, I've got a whole lot of contamination that's sitting over here on this other side. Lindsay. Yes.
So you're focusing on point number 2.
Yeah, which is the background point.
My point number 4 on the background.
Yeah.
Went to 255 before.
That's fine though, because this you want white, but you need to get this white too, because that guy's still there. So when you get this to white, that will be white. When you get this to white, that won't be, right? So you need the more aggressive point. Okay, I feel like, guys, that I'm missing. There's contamination. Look at this whole left side of this girl's head. You can see that there's an enormous amount of contamination in the hair right over here. So I am going to simply put another color sample. I'm going to zoom into this area over here. You can see it's a lightish gray. And I'm going to put another color sampler point right in there, right in this area right in here. Can you see all that contamination? That should be all black. You could paint it in, but a levels move will be much faster. So I'm going to simply hit a point like right there. And then again, Command L to bring up the levels dialog box and drag my slider and just start to push it up till I get to, I'm going to again do an RGB readout here, but you can see, and you can visualize it. Some people would just do this by eye and just take it out. So I ended up around a 15 or a 16 on that black point. And go ahead and say OK. It's just a quicker move. And then finally, I still have a little work that I need to do, cleanup work that I need to do as far as the spill part goes down here. So again, I'm going to hit the B key and go to an overlay brush. And I'm going to make sure it's a medium hard overlay brush, 100% opacity, 100% flow. And black is my foreground color, so I'm going to take care of the shirt first. I'm going to hit the X key and then clean up all this other junk that's around there. Again, I'm going to try to stay off of that cheek, just because I'm a little worried that that's going to be kind of bad. Say what? I did. So this area right here. Look at my screen really quick. If I do this, you can see that it really fucks up that edge right there. You're being too aggressive about it. So instead, I'm just going to come in close to this and not be so aggressive. Again, even though the tool will help me do a lot of that work, don't make the tool work any harder than it actually should. With the whites down here, I possibly could. Well, I mean, let's see. Let's try it. I'm worried that it's going to actually attack some of this other finer hair that's all up in here. That's what I'm a little bit nervous about. But let's see. You could, and then run levels on that. Absolutely. So what a lot of people are suggesting is, well, let's zoom in and take a look at what one of those colors is. So I'm going to pick like this hair part right down in here, or whatever the heck that is. So again, I'm going to put another color sampler point on that, and I'll drop it right there. Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. It's this number 6 point right now in RGB, and I'm at like a 223. So I'll take this and start to pull up and go to my arrow keys. And my arrow keys got there. And I'm going to take a look at what it's done to the rest of my hair. So look at all this beautiful hair that was up here. That's all gone now. Look at the preview difference. So the brush thing is just much better for me. So that's how I'm going to go after it. Oh, right here? Yeah, but you don't have to. I mean, again, this is an elective thing for me. It's not wrong. I think this stuff that's over here is wrong, but so maybe you want to leave that. We'll leave that. I'll just get rid of this stuff that's over her shoulder. And also, there's a problem up in the very top right-hand corner as well. And you can see it up here. If you hold your mouse over this, you'll see that we're actually getting readouts up in my screen that's around. It's in the 250s, something like that. To get rid of this part, I'm going to go to a completely soft brush. I am going to keep it as an overlay brush, whatever. I'm going to drop the opacity of this down to about 50%. And then I'm going to make it a little bit larger brush. You're never going to get a perfect transition right here, but you can get a little bit better one. And I'm going to simply hit and pop and drag out. That's all I'm doing is dragging out. And then hit it a couple times up here in the very corner. You'll never have it perfect down in here, but you just finessed it a little bit. Oh, and I've still got, I went all the way back, so I need to do my levels again. I went back in history, so I need to do my levels again to get rid of that black. It's my point number 5 right here. Okay. Double click on the hand. We're going to do the same thing again. We are going to make another copy of this background. We are going to drag it all the way on the very top of our image, at the very, very top. I'm going to, again, look at the 0 selective color. And again, I've made this thing backwards. So I am going to simply Command-I to invert it. I'm going to then load this as a selection, Command-click, and then come back over to my background layer and add this as a layer mask. Now, in this case, I feel like I've got considerably more. It seems like I've got more spill that's happening in here. But I would also argue that everything that I'm looking in here seems to be legitimate hair. So I've still got this contamination that's sitting up here. I can see it right here. So if I select, I'm on my layer mask. Where the heck is that coming from? Yep, that's actually still not completely knocked out. So you can do this on your layer mask. I'm going to still get hit the B key to get a brush. I am going to keep it as an overlay brush. I am going to pop it up to 100% right now, working on my mask, and I'm going to simply, that is coming from someplace else. What else is on? Oh, I don't have my, I don't have my white layer on. No, there was no contamination in there. Sorry. Okay, so this is where I'm at again. I'll double click on the hand. I've got quite a bit of spill in this guy as well. We would fix the spill the same way we did with the other one. At this stage of the game, save your work. So finally, now let's go ahead and get rid of the spill really quick. So again, it's selecting the pixel layer, not the mask. Hit the B key to get a brush. Change your blending mode to color. Keep it 100% opacity, 100% flow. Make sure it is a completely soft brush. Come over to the hair. Start to sample hair using the Option key. Again, I just keep resampling over and over and over again. Sure. So now select the pixel layer. And I'm going to be pretty quick about this guy right here. And then again, the spill on her face. And then one final thing here for me anyway, I feel like this edge on this side of her face is a little too sharp for me right here. So I want to soften this up just a little bit. I actually want to choke this as well. I've got that really hard contrasty line. It's just like the line we had on the girls sitting in the woods where we did our practice choke part. So before you do a choke on this, again, come over to your history palette, click on the little snapshot or not snapshot, but the little icon of the camera, and call this pre-choke. History palette at the bottom, the little camera, and say okay. And then clicking on the mask that is controlling this, I need to soften up this edge. So up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. And we need to hit this harder than a 1 pixel radius. So I'm going to hit it with I'm going to go with 3 pixels on this guy. So I'm trying to soften up this edge right here. That I feel like that's actually soft enough now. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And then Command L to bring up the levels dialog box to run the choke on this. So again, I'm going to take the black point and push this in to try to get that line to actually go away. This line has actually gone away, but I feel like this line is still, I got rid of the darker of the lines, but I feel like this edge is overly sharp now. I think this is actually too sharp, and I don't really have any place left to go in this. So I'm going to hit cancel out of this. I'm going to go back 1 step in history, so that blur was not strong enough. So back 1 step in history, and then again up to the Gaussian blur again, blur, Gaussian blur. And instead of 3 pixels, I'm going to hit it more like 5. We'll see what that looks like. Something close to that, and go ahead and say OK to that. Command L to bring up the levels dialog box and start to pull that black point up to sort of draw that in. Yeah, and I'm feeling much better about that part. That seems like a nicer edge right there to me. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. But again, look what this just did. If you look at the double click on the hair, it fucked up all this hair. I mean, all of that is ruined. I got this edge. That's what I wanted, but I ruined everything else. So again, I'm going to click on the little camera for the history icon and put in post choke. That's okay. You all right? And I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that post choke. And then, guys, check this out. I'm just going to go back in history. This levels right here and the blur, those were my chokes right there. That's what did it right there. I'm going to go back to the brush tool just before that happened. And you'll see that that whole line came back. I get all my hair back, but I've still got that really dark line back. To get rid of it, I'm going to go up to the top of my history palette. I'm going to put the brush, the history brush. I'm going to click on the little space next to post choke for my history brush. Then I'm going to select the history brush. And then I'm simply going to zoom into this area of her skin over here. Make my cursor a little bit, make my brush a little bit larger. Make sure that you are working on that mask. And I'm going to simply paint that out. The history brush is right underneath the clone stamp tool. But look at my screen right here. You'll see this is the choke this was what I was trying to get rid of. And that choke does it perfectly. And it's just gone. It actually even sharpens up this other side a little bit. You can actually run it down along that to sort of smooth that skin part out just a little bit there as well. So then I would save, first I'm going to rename this layer Zero Selective. And save your work. And then finally, we're going to do this one last time, and we got 15 minutes to do it. No, I take that back. We're not. I thought I had you do that 3 different ways, but
Yeah, we did.
that's what I thought. We did color range too. All right, so let's try color range, the last one. Go ahead and turn this guy off at the very top. Turn off your white layer. Your selective color can get thrown away. Your hue saturation can get thrown away as well. We don't need either one of those. Yes? Yo, sure. Just if you're going to keep them, turn them off. So here, I'll keep mine. But turn off the eyeballs, because otherwise your image looks black and white. Okay, so I'm going to select a background layer one last time. I'm going to then come up to, so everything is off except for my background layer, up to the select menu, down to color range. And again, if you want your screen to look like mine, you need to use the selection preview drop down to say grayscale. And then click on the first of the eyedroppers will be selected. And you simply want to hit it on the background, which will give you the beginning of a selection right now. If you want to add to that selection, you need to click on the eyedropper that's in the very middle, the add tool. Because otherwise, any place that you select becomes a new selection. So that's not going to help us out here. So I'm going to select that guy right here. Then I'm going to select the plus slider right here. And in this plus part, you want to click around. What a lot of people do is they will actually click and drag across the green area. And then they'll come up here in the top and they will do the same thing. It ends up selecting every green that it runs across. It ends up selecting that part. So again, you could select another part down in here. If you feel like you've gone too far and there's something that you didn't want to be part of the selection, you would use the minus eyedropper that's all the way to the right-hand side. But for me, I care about this hair that's up in this corner up into here. I think right now this selection is a little too aggressive, so I'm going to use the fuzziness slider to back this off or to push it out just a little bit. So you can use this guy to sort of, how aggressive is this thing being? How much are you actually controlling here or not? Again, there is no real preview button per se here that'll allow you to see it the way that we see it when we're actually using levels. Yeah, I feel like this is being a little bit aggressive, but we'll see how it works out. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. We've got a selection that's active going right now. So I'm going to come up to the select menu and I'm going to come down to save selection and I'm going to call it color range. Color range knockout. And say OK to that. Command D to deselect and let's go take a look at it. This is what it is actually looking at to me. There's a little bit of work that we need to actually do on it. So I can see, for instance, that the lapel still isn't there. So again, I'm going to hit the B key to get an overlay brush. Make sure that it is an overlay brush. I'm going to make sure that it's at least a medium hard overlay brush. 100% opacity, 100% flow. Black is my foreground color, and I'm going to use it to paint in the lapel of the shirt. I'm hitting that 2 or 3 times, 3 or 4 times. I'm going to look around the rest of this image to see if I can see contamination. I don't feel like I've got a contamination in there, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. So I'm going to go back up to the top, select my RGB channel. I'm going to copy again the the background, exactly what we've been doing before. So I just made a copy of the background image down at the very bottom. I just made a copy of the background. Here, just to copy the background. We're going to test this guy out. I'm going to drag this copy all the way up to the top. I'm going to turn on my white background. I am going to then load that selection. It's at the very bottom, color range knockout. Command click to load it as a selection. I am going to apply it as a layer mask. And unlike all the other ones, I didn't invert this one first, but it doesn't mean I can't invert it now. I can. So it's with the mask is actually active with the little brackets around it. Command I has now inverted it. And this is our last one that we actually can then sort of like go in and fix. So again, I'm going to zoom in on this guy to fix the spill really quick. I'm going to select the RGB guy right here, the pixel layer. Hit the B key to get a brush, change the blending mode to color, make sure it is 100% opacity, 100% flow. I'm going to use my drop-down menu to make sure that this is a completely soft image. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing I've been doing for all the spill removal, is to actually start to sample color over and over and over again. to then remove the spill. When you went to color, what happened? Oh, it's not colored here. You have to let me move here. It's letting me move the brush. And I kind of feel like I should choke this other side as well, but we've already done that once, so we got a lot of other things we need to get to tonight, so I'm not going to do that. Finally, I would save my work one last time. And then this is what, to actually look at the differences between these two, you can actually do, the easiest way to do this is to do this with history states, because one of the problems that you run into doing this, trying to look at this right now, is how fast can you turn off this layer and turn the other one on underneath it? It's like really hard to do, right? And you try to do it really, really fast and it never works. So the easiest way to do this is with history states. So I'm going to make the first history state with this, I'm going to actually change its name first though. I'm going to call this color range. The layer that we're actually did this to. So with color range turned on and the other two turned off and the white background, that's the only thing we've actually got on here. Come over to your history palette, click on the little camera icon at the bottom to create a history state, and we'll call this color range. Knockout. And say okay. Then turn it off and then turn on your zero selective color one and do another history snapshot and call it zero selective color. And say okay. And then finally turn that one off and turn on the one that is your was your channel knockout. And again, one last history state stamp and call this channel knockout. And say okay. Then if we come up to our history palette at the very top, I'm going to give myself just a little bit more room here. You've got the three of them are sitting right here at the bottom, and you can simply click on them. So if you click on color range, that's what that one looks like. If you select zero selective color, that's what that looks like. And then finally, your channel knockout. So I'm going to zoom in and look a little bit closer at this hair edge and see what I like about this or don't like about this. So that's my channel knockout. That's actually my zero selective color. The channel knockout, the zero selective color seems a little more blocked up. And then that's finally my color range at the top. So in this case, I'm actually happier in some ways. Oh, that's a hard one to say. It's halfway between the zero selective color and the channel knockout as far as that part goes. Either one of them, though, will impress the hell out of somebody who's interviewing you. Yeah, I actually think I'm going to go with the zero selective color guy. Are there questions about this? All right, so you can save this now and turn that in for your homework. And I don't think there was one other thing for your homework, wasn't there? With the other Sunny, which we did in class last week. Right, which is due next week. So final proposals, written proposals for final project are due next week. Okay, guys, let's do a quick break. I've got 7:53 if we can. Let's make it back by 10 after 8. We've got a lot to do. We actually start retouching tonight. Yeah.